computer address?
That's the viewing computer.
Oh, okay, you want to just flash to that?
Yeah.
Okay, deal. That'd be preferable anyway. I don't want to have to use computers. I don't have to. No, where's the... Yeah. Can you
Should we
highlight
speak from right here, maybe? You
Uh,
guys can.
yeah, we can move down. Deal.
Whose laptop is this?
That's the viewing computer.
It's just charging right now. I don't think it needs to charge much. Just in case. Oh, and there's another outlet.
Running on both sides. Hilarious. Yeah, okay. You guys ever seen a debate before? Or?
One.
Like,
It doesn't matter because I have no idea what you're
Right.
talking about.
My parents have tried
You
to
said too, you came at Converse, didn't you?
Yes. Yes, I did.
oh yeah, I didn't get to see any because I was with the novice team.
Oh, right.
I guess I could have watched them, but they were nervous enough. As
It's always
it
sad to
was.
see
I
like, the
know.
enthusiastic parents come in, see their child debate, and then it's like,
Nathan, would you describe us as enthusiastic?
no.
Yeah.
I would.
Annoying might be better.
Sure. Whatever you say, Mom. No, is the 1 and C together for everything?
Oh, random question. Y'all debated protein they were named against you at some point this year.
Yeah.
Thrice.
What are they? We're up next round. What do they go for?
They went
They went for
politics
word
in case
pick.
once and then word pick the next
About
one.
that.
Up there.
Well, the reason is because we read, you know what we read, so that's why they didn't have very much to say.
Will you help me unscrew this one? The middle.
Have a good day, you guys. We'll see you. Thanks. Yeah, she's super nice.
Judy's coaching on this tournament.
Yeah.
Sick.
Pretty
I love how everybody knows everybody.
You know, did
And
you
it goes
get
across the whole nation. You all
Where's Boo?
and you compete against each other, but you all like each other anyway. It's too bad the whole world couldn't pick up that philosophy, you know.
Can you just go look for the middle?
Yeah, but unless it's in the car, in this case we should talk to you about it now.
Why would it be in the car?
Because you were highlighting it, like, where'd you bring it in? It's new back now.
No, it was with the. Yeah, look in there, real quick. Alright. And, yep. Is it there? Alright. Thank you. And then. What school are you from, by the way?
Tom Street.
Yeah. Okay, okay.
She's our mom.
Oh, okay. Awesome.
College girl.
Kind of could use real quick.
A pen?
Yeah.
There you go.
You have a box of pens.
Yes, we do.
Because he eats.
You wanna-
It's true.
It's pretty hungry, so. I bet you're kidding it. No, he's pretty serious. He goes ham. I'm gonna buy those kosher too. Yeah, so I'm gonna, alright. It's a little bit of a joke.
Funny.
Hey, the one he sees paper, right?
Yes.
Okay. We just plug this in, so this is all.
More paper in this bit than in any debate I've seen all year, I think.
What about all the other times you've judged us?
Yeah, but remember
Yeah, but now there's actually-
a single speech on paper.
Yeah. Real quick, no, do you have, do we have everything? Where's the D file?
Is that the one?
I got, yeah.
I know, but like, where's the
We got
When this starts, please sign my thing.
Hey, what happened to those cards you wanted me to highlight?
EY, pyramid.
You put them in this. They're right there. I put them in this. You're in there. This is the one that's
Capital Y.
Yeah.
Oh, not capital Y.
No, not capital Y.
Okay.
But,
Pyramid, or period.
yeah.
Yes, let me just get out of time, I'm sorry.
Andre, can you close the door?
I think I can move this right there. This right here? Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay, cool. Orange timer, sure. Yeah. Let me just get out of timer, sorry.
Why do you have a bag full of toys?
For night terrors. It's a joke. Alright. Harsh look. Yeah, I think we're good.
Contention one is things that don't cause extinction, no nuclear winter. This evidence assumes there are rocks and model seed 6 and nuclear winter papers were the worst example of misinterpretation of science of public nuclear winter never exists outside of pure exception to airbrush simulations do not produce a popular substance to spread classical rainfall movement days for technologists and not even single degree cool results in delays and climate change, disease, nuclear war, ozone depletion, and other things don't cause extinction. Hazard 11. Even larger supereruption, no alcohol, humans as self-pollution, and one and destroy entire species, supernova mass with the resiliently upper weird depth was found regard countries will happen to kill more than a couple billion no pain, the worst would kill a couple billion nuclear war would not kill a few dozen people already on the ground, and no nuclear war, UN peacekeeping, psychological shift, make nuclear work extremely like a dangerous foe. Wars less and less being used to resolve conflict goals and progression of international relation, create an international institution with the pacification of international community that resolve conflict without violence, thinker, drives psychology, harbor argument, personal norms and social transfer, foster yourself away from violence, thinker, side psychological change, empathy, driving parts of social society, skills away from Mars, with bank goes to an office and approach to the kinds of warfare pessimists only, reaching the conclusion of this scholarly and massive plan. The President of the United States federal government should covertly develop planetary defense capabilities beyond the Earth's atmosphere, including the development of advanced space propulsion, signal technology. Contention 2 is things that do cause extinction. Scenario 1 is near-Earth objects. First, if they high risk of asteroids strike, new research and history prove that strikes happen often in the planet field of common time is brigade. Several asteroids which are playing recently, cause asteroids strikes, the same frequency the strike land and 100 large impact asteroids in the ocean near Earth. Space rocks are harmonious with what's away other orbits may have a single most of the assumption of the space rock are beautifully operated for astronomers. Discover that people at least 1,000 orbits being is seen there. They be seen from Earth and located there cause between the console system gravitational pull effects that all cause shifting asteroids and interplanetary years 294. Near space rocks that were not possible to were not exist now 794. NASA classified 186 as impact for space search have been low, but it refers the actual number of impacts are so undoubtedly much higher. Even if space tracks are only likely once in a million years, that doesn't mean million years will pass before the next impact. The sky could suddenly dark tomorrow, and any of those strikes cause extinction. McGuire 2, a 10-kilometer asteroid released so much energy to billion years to providing creating fireball hotter than sun, vaporized the ocean, tearing the atmosphere apart, heat, rated the surface, forcing animals, living, spreading great collaboration, and turning port of all living material and catch global wildfires, and asteroid pointing the ocean, wiping out, bringing life after freezing creation, gloom lifted only to reveal playable sample as fried many spatial populations and famine. A quarter of the world population could see on falling and impacting 1 kilometer size, and opposite 4 kilometers across the whole just into the reduced light levels below those who craft borders and there's no reason we cannot be hit the next year. Discovered asteroid 13 to collide with the Earth, and fortunately detections improving will discover thousands of potentially hazardous NEO Jones 8 new telescopes over harmless knowledge improves the NEO detecting capabilities to answer so has significant times of power. Current telescopes detect up to 100 around 90% of the opportunities. Will lead to discovery that over 500,000 asteroids large and small working will give us years of impact warning. However, we have no asteroid deflection strategy now due to NASA's tight budget and around 11. NASA stretches in develop a planetary defense program. NASA agencies budget to catch on 1/7 form machine NASA and rocks necessary to intercept an asteroid something. With the target is one big growth for these good stage rocks to grasping worse than the 60s. NTR propulsion is the only way to deflect a large asteroid thing at 11. NTR propulsion not only increases the range of intercept times, the vastly decrease the mass electric propulsion. Are unlikely to practical NTR propulsion appears the only viable choice for direction of a fast moving asteroid. The minimum mass occurs first time intercept. 17 years before impact, there are 3 vehicles capable of going on and compared to interception combo with diameter 1.5 kilometers can be reflected NTRs. Should have happened in many hazard scenarios. Scenario 2 is invasion. New evidence shows that extraterrestrial intelligent life exists. The Drake equation predicts at least 10,000 other civilizations, and that's an underestimate. Need is 10. Here's the Drake equation. N equals large times FE times NE times FI times FI times FI times FC times L. You should be able to know except for first time research making advantage of multiple parts FI. R star Drake is in 10 numbers and most of 17 FE Drake average 10.5 Berkeley star rest is 9% NE. Drake is 2 the traditional habitals that may be true connected life and more resilient than most places super fast hallway. Temperatures above the polar as well as NE can only get bigger. The conditional life exists on the outside of the normal habitals zone because the line of the energy sources that fell Drake is same one. Percent evidence to that you water and the basic ingredients of good temperature rest with those ingredients of give rise to life on earth. Carbohydrates and more reason for the party recent findings support that claim every unit cell organ pre-created nutrients all development of children becomes almost certain FC as Matt was 0.1 naturally. Now, FC may be closer to 100%. I was dominated civilization long living so that hundreds of civilization was successful for billion years. That would raise the value of 10 million observation bolstered many assumptions he made in 1961. If anything, the numbers even called near too small. The best case of 50 years for 10,000 communicating civilization of galaxy and conservative inputs into Drake equation stats that we should be visited by at least once every human's lifetime. We haven't been attacked yet because humans have only been detectable for about 100 years. Talent at 11. We produce electromagnetic spectra detectable by the cheapest 100 years are early. These signals have yet to reach many plants were too mature, at least to new intelligent civilization helping the after time of human being. Such civilization would need more than resources than we resources we must have either. Venture artists would play our exercises and series of all the civilization, more than 200,000 traveling civilizations being much worth success. A high probability of at least one heat visiting the average lifetime, but most of the numbers here used are very conservative, and they're more likely to be hostile than friendly. Tail and bone now 11. Each year surveyed by the African to gain research and labor source of food. And gain ethical and watching the eliminate all the good that is instant connected event short from series of public information back. A high probability of here that's here to set by say to likely to also get the probability of being visited by hostile here appears greater than a benevolent ET, and hostile contact would wipe out our civilization. They'd be far more technology advanced. Bomb at 11. ET would be skillfully strong and capable of causing total destruction, community attack, or relative beliefs. ET has been around much longer and broker technological abilities, the ability to contact us and apply progress to your society. We've not yet figured out interstellar communication society has its own more technology advanced. We're up at AT. Our advanced form of contact will proceed according to the ATS status. We're guaranteed to lose between us and them. Such loss will be so severe that we see survive as civilization. Reducing existential risk by even a tiny amount outweighs every other impact. The math is conclusively on our side. Boston 11. Existential risk are more serious than other risk categories. They destroy the entire creature compared to nuclear because 90% of the world's existing population nuclear because 100%. The difference between the things must be the difference between the high fraction of the rest of history. The expected level of existential catastrophe greater than the value of 10 to 18 lives in mere 1% chance to be correct percent of the value of reducing existential risk by mere percentage points worth billion lives. Even the tiniest reduction of existential risk as expected. In fact, greater than the definite provision of any ordinary good. Contention 3 solvency. The most serious deficiency in planetary advanced capabilities is the lack of propulsion development. Only planes self-standing below 11. The most serious deficiency in planetary advanced capabilities is space propulsion. No can activate military operation in space. No propulsion system exists. The solar system would raid human would be forced to fight. There are home planet on the planet. Stations for defense. Fights against force that we have a consciously developed chemical force would be sure to be ineffective against alien space weapons development. Search to muscle or lower priority propulsion development. The weapons we have to have ineffective and serious against battleship. We cannot protect weapons. Development that have aspects of this weird head might as well if we cannot get them where they're needed. And an increase in signal challenge capabilities is essential for preparing our defenses when the ETs arrive. Tail and bone now 11. We need to collect intelligence about ET. We will for the nation for use signal intelligence. They can detect the electronic missions and geolocate them if we can collect signal from ET. Using signal in small proportions. We can be collecting signal. The signal system should be fairly small. Aperture of the collection system would be the smallest easiest launch place in the air with a signal. It offers a number of advantages. We could open up some frequencies which are available from Earth. We'll need to new tech to see shape signal collection. The space system will be free from gravitational limitation at 60 gigahertz aboard and appearance. And we must act now to solve extinction. We must act now to solve extinction even if the invasion never occurs. The planet solves all their impacts. Tail and bone at 11. Our best purpose survives to being prepared now. If the invasion never occurs, and moves forward to major technological development in history, which was sparked acting being prepared also gives us the better chance to survive against meteor impacts, massive damage, natural disaster, and other logical hazards scenarios are prepared. And secret unilateral action by the United States to promote space development is key. Tail and bone at 11. We must prepare to nation. There are a number of barriers preparing as a global institution which disclose the details of technical system used to it. Whereas Britain and Russia would disclose into Iran, North Korea. This would create tech intention, not protection, nuclear test, and North Korea, and its violation of nuclear code to Russia and the use of WD and should major president will be countries who, both from the United States, negotiate from this other country would be in charge of small special agencies should be established, should have special taxes, should be separate from the existing politicized government agencies, must be high secret disclose the existence of the product would be increased in the team, but develop the technical plan as well as defense organization to develop the strategy for dealing with the countries that officials should be government finance and must also have adequate budget and absolute control of the expenditure of the budget of the organization must be separate autonomous and special because this mission is unique and critical longevity of the human race, and the president has the authority to choose the plan. Tail and bone 11. The DSC should answer the person only not only committed, but it should be permanent and untouchable before the DSC has the organization. The DSC can be the SCI and the joint CP only after the president all must be separate and predicate must remain outside political affairs should be studied if the SCI and SSCR should be briefed to full disclosures which can lead to the other 6 companies exist and remains completely secret.
Okay. Alright. The first question. Aliens are going to come. Why would they be violent?
Our tail and bone evidence says that it is likely that they be violent. Given past encounters between new civilizations, it is likely that they
So
will be
your argument
violent.
is that because humans act a certain way, we should assume that if
No.
life exists out there, it should act the same way we've acted. Because your evidence says, like, he
No,
could be like
actually,
Hitler
our evidence is
because-
very specific and says that we do not know the intentions of ETs, but that is why we should...
Your evidence says, quote, AT is more advanced than us. It's difficult to believe that there may be motivators in the universe. Therefore, it's logical to believe that ET is driven by the same set of factors that drive the human race. Why should we start with the assumption that extraterrestrial life should be driven by the same factors and assumptions that guide human life?
That's not our argument. Our argument is that...
What are you talking? That's the entire
No,
argument the card
hang
makes.
on.
Okay, please tell me the argument then. If that's
The
not
card
the
is
argument.
saying that... Chayton.
Given the history of different civilizations meeting each other, usually it ends up badly for one, or one is usually after something for the other.
This isn't
Our-
only-
So we should assume that
this isn't-
extraterrestrial life wants something from us. That's why they're there.
Argument is that if they've made the conscious decision to
Come
engage
here.
in interstellar travel to come to planet Earth, they are more likely here for something than not here for something.
Okay, so interstellar travel, they're obviously pretty advanced, right?
Yeah.
then why would the app do anything?
Our alien drone evidence indicates that we have developed weapons now, but the only chance we have to counter the aliens.
How do you know that they
then-
just don't have like special alien shields?
Well,
that let them
that's
block it?
exactly what SIGINT does. It detects when the aliens are coming, so we can see what capabilities they have, so we know which weapons we should use.
I mean, that's a good argument, but it's not a reason to vote negative.
Yeah.
Is there a chance that we'll lose when the aliens show up? Possibly, but
The app is the
better
only
than
thing
the
that
status
does
quo.
something.
So it's better to just
Status quo
assume
does
that
absolutely
they
nothing.
want to destroy us,
Right.
right? So your argument is that it's better to assume that whenever we come up with other life, we should
Well-
assume that they're against our way of life, that they want to
Aliens-
destroy us. That sounds exactly the justification that we used when we went to
Well-
like America and thought that Indians were
Not
non-Christian
exactly.
and
Like-
hated us.
Like, we don't make the assumption that all aliens are evil, right? There are probably some benevolent
Right, but you've
aliens.
put a laser shield in
Well, no,
space.
but the ones that have made the conscious decision to come here.
So
we
just
should
because
not
they're coming here, we
assume-
should assume that they're bad,
we
right?
should
Just
have
because
a-
they
we should have a
came
game
near us.
plan ready.
Yes.
Yeah.
All
When
right,
they
your Cornetris evidence says that UN peacekeeping, psychological shift, prevent nuclear war. Can you name 3 instances of UN peacekeeping that has not been a direct result of colonialism?
Like, I don't understand.
Your main claims that UN peacekeeping, etc., operations like those,
Well, our
prevent the
argument is
escalation of war. Can you name 3
Our argument is
examples
that
of peacekeeping?
states are more reluctant to escalate
Because
wars
they-
or go to war because they know that there's a strong multilateral global framework for intervening. True, there are conflicts that still happen, but our argument is that the rate of those conflicts and the escalation of those conflicts has significantly decreased,
Okay.
at least since the formation of the UN.
I just want to point out, so do we have an NTR propulsion technology now?
No, we don't have the physical rockets.
But
no.
could we develop it?
The plan does.
Because the evidence
Plan
says
does.
delays are not catastrophic. Like we could just develop. Like why can't we just see the asteroid and develop? Never mind.
Oh, well, the card also says we need to detect.
5, and then the case order is aliens, asteroids.
Okay, then you can read it.
No, let's switch that.
I didn't know what
Make
the
it
beginning
asteroids,
was.
aliens.
Yeah. I had the password right. You said asteroids and aliens?
Do that.
Yes. Is it asteroids and aliens?
Here's a good time for this.
Yeah.
Would you flip this way? Could you flip this way?
No, we don't want to do that.
Aliens and asteroids?
Asteroids.
Asteroids. That's right.
Yep. Hold on. Okay. Yeah.
Sorry.
First time, in this recovery now, but new launches go page 9 of the space rocket service, the ozone is the black course, the ozone destroying missions, hospitals, Mars, instructed by CSCs, the ozone, return to normal for 24 extinction of festivity, ozone is essential for life, without the ozone radiation would not be filled with cancer breakout, all species will be in jeopardy. Next up is key, interpretation, exploration, requires human presence, lux, night, whatever keeping provides, appreciation of exploration, human activity, national scientific research, and technological innovation, exploration can only be accomplished, direct human presence, so development, living systems, moving space technology, gas research, provides development, not expansion of humans, projects to space, and standard saying limits their interpretation, knowledge, military, commercial, observational, author, satellites, explodes, government some already huge shopping can be predictable, ground satellites are watched all the time, and there's no unique link to perception distance, only human exploration sends a signal, robotic development should be a contemplated topic, at least voted for fairness education. Next up is the asteroid weapons, this says the flex will be used to make asteroid weapons most probable extinction for SIG in 94. If you can predict an asteroid, never check, we can just one of the 9 trajectory into Earth, and make the sound order, make the difference in technological offer, but the words are making asteroids can make the Earth will do so, and there but take a few years to send a crash to Earth, there's no other way if new governments get to that, new global civilization development of the site, with the history, presence, politics is hard to measure, the guarantees against misuse, those who are prudent, catastrophic, make a probabilities of 10, negative 5, 1 can as prudence, preventing more capable probability, the world, different biological technology, astromodification, life, human frailty, and flight will introduce a new danger that dwarfs the bliss, but objects themselves and the line independently risk extinction, deflection, detection technologies, and more, like, could be this, you use your overuse status quo, delay is taken 97. Tracking asteroids is incustomable, however, considered rolling technology to flex small worlds into dimension. This technology has abominations. Other hands balance and cars hardly inhibits the similar intent. How common the community will be able to detect the clandestine asteroid after the time. If research yourself surveillance is public exam be created in such time. Use this will public pressure to mitigate even non-existent threats. And for a period of time permitting this, that means you only vote negative. Status quo is preferable policy alternative there. Impact calculus is the link to the DA, SIG in 97.
We must face the deflection element. We develop this technology may do this harm in the same way the astro may do the resolution of the hinges of the fact that times go to be very different, shorter than longer than the other. Which being developing the time we may destroy ourselves or world of legal organization meet the significant stars, which has to bring your species together, facing many common dangers, humans to recharge by through possible by opposing two different custom hero and natural non-human said this fall. Worlds for motivation of beneficial effective institution that unify the human species where we and unification the impact of haste and space. Eventually we get to learn how to change the orbits and not worlds we can afford. We rebuild political institutions for centuries. Asteroid has reforced their hand. We must exchange our political systems. Next up is the invisibility contemplate text. The President of the United States should develop planetary defense capabilities beyond the U.S. sphere, including the development of advanced in space propulsion, signal intelligence technology, and secrecy is used by the public sphere to serve national interest. Master 7. The power of the secrets difficult over global security state, bending the secrets under discourse from myth or the warrant response to mutation, nature, state provided, but top among expansion, state security, former secret society, state power, rest in the building, advanced public secret divided through mobilization, threat, and sparks all, secret, equivalent, atomic secret, and state secrecy, and lockdown of public sphere, makes all life disposable, ensures massive violence, row 6. Ultranational imagery of empires made most of your symbols widespread throughout American culture, inserting racial hierarchy, use currently crashing sovereignty through wild politics in which the affliction of power, the threat of war violence, warfare, state war violence is organized, securing terrorism, which increasingly form a single deadly system of entire population, not seen as disposable, violent democratic tendencies and trends at war against all. Next up is the K. The assumption that the technology is only a tool for us is bad to the impact of extinction, turn time. Focus interest for both the material and technology we draw upon ourselves and describe their finally significant artificial anthropocentric ultimate measure of significance of measurement of your expendable are we ever anything is value in human terms. As Robert's worth is something as saying is value is only for object of estimation ever valuing subjectified as it does. Not because we are not only for us, we are always for us. We all become setting reserve framing means other possibilities of comes concealed. Our alternatives embrace the absolute otherness of every other. This is the only more imperative as critical corruption violence in turn time. In some creating values for our image, we the absolute otherness of everything should be only more proud of in ethics of artificial beyond the anthropocentric metaphysics of recognition impossibly. Naked person, hospitalized culture, and humans to make a decision about value being. We take such a critique for significance of our organization, for everything willing pain. We play should be critique here for more significance, or critique for worthiness being like us. I think so. Those we have shown nothing in common, never attempt to find common inclusive countries. The violence every entity. What about the intimate? The intimate suggests the whole human. The other is the human opposite throughout the year. Egos constitute single universal community. What about the intimate? So you'll be distinct for the act of being itself. Our infinite and holy other more than the human other, the infinitely otherness. Every other sort of impulsive pleasure won't get right into the question into a question. We have no basis for excluding the intimate other than how the asteroid argument when their impact framing argument then if you go to affirmative Nathan and I will use a black hole generator to destroy the world that will most reward a risk of extinction and no impact extinction expert. No extinction expert is a great time frames 40 million years by the time. Paleontology resisting 70 cause and effect relationship between creator and 16 dollar astronaut like a dire concept paleontological astronomy society geological evidence studies system kill X-rays giving credit does not serve. The next rendezvous with annihilation will be overdue for 40 million years of time and probably it's non-existent sequel time series ridiculous of large asteroids takes 7 every few decades. We single legitimate whereby once again 1 million chance of it being an asteroid having you over 100 times more likely to be struck by writing of their authors revised by 10. We should acknowledge the tendency scientific journals publish 60 papers that are selected with those most extreme results. Understand what those spectacular results more likely to publish journals. Check the public or success ratio for unprofitable charlatans make them names for their self-manipulation amounts of regular collision between space rock and Earth would determine the Greek crowd asteroids. The ultimate probability if no one has recorded human history is the form to die. The total deaths by an asteroid is 0 and any risk watching will make all decision making impossible at best line. 1% dashes in clear and political republic can be applied to world when providing potential to dangerous scenarios. Each of these risks would deserve our attention. We cannot address all of them simultaneously with mentality. We have to make choices. This is how we behave with the time we give in our hearts. Each chance we kill along the way. Any creature that adopts the precautionary principles would be able to act nor act with discover the perfect safety and the absolute type of premeditation risk and the future plans that applies to logical control and security, which underwrites the location, the impact, and violent elimination of the perceived threat. They want to see. This is an independent reason to vote negative to good aid. Secret cremation is enabled through risk management. The risk of nations here decided to quantify the future of management has to be seen as a calculable pressure risk, just the infinity of uncertain potential damage and access to the hard cremation, the purpose of which is astro mentioned such areas so somebody can stop to be understood. Somebody can evaluate hopelessly the subject is covered through anxiety, striving to attain possible safety. And says most also flexion breeds up necessary to contingency and notification videos and object detecting the first very likely to verify and fold it. Channel scratch that.
Yeah. No, yeah.
Even if an asteroid was attacked, we wouldn't deflect the spark apart. The next method regards to national borders of things for such policy considerations is challenging. The action itself, the issues of what we know, will become the extremely timing, the limited timing. The practice for such avoidance, absolutely willing, extreme satisfying as of national influence like that. But consideration will not exist, the rise of probable and neoism, exposition, the protection of all rise and running a path and suffer the consequence of mission detected from the impact of us and they become impossible to resolve, and they can detect comets by any time. So some necessary defense against every good unpredictable throw one basically weapons we distant descendants are to spread the defense against comets are their slashing intractable are defined if it'll break the wild card and earth curls comets are the wild card and earth curls and aliens. We'll consider evidence that humans are becoming non-violent as proves that extraterrestrial life people reaching us would evolve to be non-violent also proves they'll delay contemplate on the second distance of their impact artists and impact this is the conclusion of their article Bomb 11. Cannot be known when conflict may falls when scenarios considered based on the invisibility of sustaining expansion through space. It seems unlikely ETI will destroy us. Possible contact with especially from ETI is vastly different. Life on Earth and Earth-like conditions are unique. There are no aliens consensus on our sides. Observer 2K. We're recording a current number of science will be used to think life emerges and intelligent being inevitably appear, only involved in the extraordinary series of fortuitous events. Our sun is highly stable, unaffected by fluctuating radiation size, safe suburban part of the galaxy, and gravity burst wrestling stars can do it. Dyslogic comments will devastating consequences. Life evolving forms, these improbable conditions, combination of intelligent creatures and alien life doesn't exist. Too many unlikely events like gene mutations must occur for intelligent life to form. Fall County 81. Every bit of life there is identical. The use of the nucleic acids for storage and hereditary information. One cannot make a long list of very probable mutation necessary for intelligence. We see that one mutation when spending like 12 million years foraging, grouping, and sweeping the streets. Everything's so easily created that develops in life so that any identification life on Earth is well. One to very likely we can manufacture life. We'll be able to contact the colonize, but whether it comes to detect radio signals, been fearless, but extremely fortuitous events and conditions take place. All this has been duplicated in space and time, and the theoretical research confirms reliable empirical evidence. We are alone against all 98. We tried to probably EVT based on knows how to the most reliable factors for life. And with more powerful argument against the most ample or even zero ETI existing way Milky Way over entire history of avoids assumptions inherent the theoretical approach provides an answer to the conclusion the empirical argument leads us to.
Also, no reason their deflection they could overcome our deflection.
Yeah, and there's no reason they'd be able to get a. I actually wrote that out. Where was it? Oh, fine. They're in a double line. Either the aliens are able to have the technology to destroy us entirely and are able to overcome our deflection technologies, or they do not have the technology to destroy us in the first place, and or they don't have the technology to destroy us in the first place.
And only putting up would make them.
And only playing them would threaten them.
Yeah.
Alright, classics.
What is the status of the counterplan and critique?
Both are conditional.
Alright, your link on the Sagan dissent, I don't have the card with me, seems to be talking about tracking asteroids. That is happening in the status quo. The plan does absolutely nothing to increase it. The very first line.
I mean, yes, that is a component of it, but it also says, obviously,
So
in order to
No,
turn those asteroids into weapons, we would
those
have
cards
the
are
technology.
specific about detection, not deflection, not detection.
Yeah, if in order,
Tracking
it doesn't make
asteroids-
sense that tracking asteroids themselves would cause the asteroid to hit the Earth. Obviously, that
Why
card is in the
consider
context of
developing the
technology that would allow us to change the direction of the asteroid, which
What?
the app does.
Okay, why would we want to change the trajectory of the asteroid back to Earth if we know it's going to cause extinction?
Well, I mean, I think in the same way that people would want to use a nuclear weapon eventually, the argument is that asteroids themselves, one hit, would not be calculated as cause extinction. Maybe it would,
Wait.
maybe it wouldn't in real life.
You
But
never said
countries
that-
would calculate as being able to take out like a continent or the entirety of the United States. We could take out the entirety of China. That's why our
Wait.
military would make that strategic
Wait, you
calculation. This war could escalate into multiple asteroid attacks by multiple
Alright, that's
countries.
fine.
There's a number of
That's
scenarios
fine.
in which this war could
Your
play out.
alternative on the critique is to embrace the absoluteness of every other. How do you do that when you say that exploration can only be done by humans?
On T?
Yes.
I mean, I think those arguments are certainly insulated from each other. We think that obviously exploration can be done by non-humans.
Wait,
the same way
that's
that
not your
exploration
key
can be done by
interpretation.
not the USFG.
Wait.
In the context of the resolution,
Yeah.
space exploration
The question
means
is-
in the context of US government policy, exploration with humans. That's the argument.
So why does that not apply to the alternative too?
Because they're entirely insular from each other. But
Why?
there's a conditionality.
You
but
define exploration can only
Those
be done
are
by
that's not
humans.
that's not
It's
a
not a contradiction.
contradiction.
Wait, it doesn't
one
seem
is saying like
you're
US
embracing-
government policy
Sure.
defines exploration
Okay.
as being with
That's fine.
humans. Obviously,
That's fine.
like Peter the rabbit can go exploring the
Alternative.
garden. Like we don't disagree.
After the
But-
alternative, do we still have technology? Do we still rely on technology?
Yeah, I think we recognize the way that technology shapes us.
Like, so we still use technology.
Yeah.
So would you be able to do the plan?
Nathan?
Floating pics are bad. No.
Okay. So how does that overcome your internal link evidence that says that technology is used for bad things that cause extinction?
Yeah, because technology is fluid, right? Technology is what we cast it as. Technology's meaning is inscribed on it.
Also, like
But
our
it's
link.
a question of the intentionality.
Yeah, also, our link is not just off the technology. Like the inherent assumption of the 1AC that aliens
are
will
violent.
be violent, or that we should assume that they're like
put up a
us.
system to attack them
Wait,
before
that-
they're able to
that link
even
wasn't
get
made
to
by
Earth
your
and meet us.
internal
That link was not
I
even
mean,
turned
that-
over.
yeah.
You're right. It doesn't talk about that, but when he talks about like the face-to-face interaction,
If
when we
you-
approach the other to assume that they are like us, that is exactly what you do. You assume that the other is founded in the same way that humans are. That they'll be like your evidence says, "quote,
Okay,
you
I
could
just
be
want to
another
make sure if
Hitler."
you were making an Andrew argument once.
An Ander?
An
Andrew.
Andrew argument.
On T? No.
On
No,
the critique.
on the critique.
A lot of the cross was focused on issues of anthropocentrism. You were being shady about it in cross in terms of being shown okay. So I don't know if you were making an Andrew argument.
I don't know what that means. What is it? Like, what's it mean to make an Ander argument? Like, do we argue that other forms of life and being have value? Obviously.
I mean, I tried.
Okay.
You said it was condo?
You also got a tantrum, by the way, Chief.
Oh.
This is the only impact to the counterplan, right?
I mean, the first card kind of makes it.
Okay. Thank you.
We'll do that.
What's the impact of the kind of technological control?
It's also like genocide. It's a genocide impact, and then ethics impact as well. To the Lebanese shame. Yeah.
I think it has to go up. I think so too, man.
Oh, that's the thing.
Does it go up? Well, I don't know if up works. It doesn't, you're right. Oh, and this is just a thing that'll drive our neck crazy when we lock him out of the room for the rest of the time.
I have 8:14. Time moving. You have get that already?
$8:14 remaining.
Yes.
Not used.
Yeah. I just didn't know it's
I'm almost positive it's sometimes a crap.
That's, I believe
Like
you.
the
I
whole
don't know that it's not.
Is that how it is?
Yeah, I saw it finally every day.
It's awesome. These water lights drinking. Yours now, I guess. So,
Yeah,
just don't drink mine.
you're good.
Yeah, you're fine.
I think it was theirs for the time.
Whose?
I put a water bottle on their desk.
Yeah, probably. Oh, no, it's different kind.
Oh.
We have Ice Mountain, so we're safe. Yeah.
I think I also did from yours.
Alright, well,
Yeah. Right here.
watch your gritty hands, dude.
The order is top cavity.
Okay, I'm gonna go get this and then I'll get
I'll just give you a quick top cavity, the asteroid advantage, the alien advantage, the intro decay, counterplan, Sagan disad, the asteroid deflection disad, and then the open disad.
and then give it back to me.
I'm really hard to see it.
Are we getting a beer, so?
Yeah.
What was the case of it?
Asteroids and then aliens.
Do you mind if we do full screen?
Yeah, no problem. Do whatever
Okay.
works out for you guys.
And then maybe.
Ready?
We got.
One, we meet NTR's allow for staff exploration of space. However, Brian County Enter can enable staff missions throughout the solar system to support exploration of space. Second, counter interpretation. Asian one, space exploration includes telepresence and operation. Lesser 9, space calls us and multiple in space exploration. While present device human explorer that have just woefully up the teleoperation of first person with remain on the surface of the humans or remote and other relevant distinct beast. One, its development includes military, includes weapons and military operations. This is the most predictable definition. NASA and 10 Congress declares that space activity shall be associated with developing weapons system, military operations, defense of the United States. 3, standard H1 is limited interpretation over limits topic by including major forms of current space exploration, which is virtual person beast. 1 is predictability are definitions from NASA, the most predictable source of the topic on space exploration, and the less relevant has and intent to define C1 education, learning about military functions, teleoperation is critical to understand the future of space and military space, where the best US keywords are also to the ToC. You're not going to shape the topic any more than the topic has already been shaped in reason, but we said provide them enough content to make fairly and educationally raise the best interpretation is arbitrary, different given different judgment. That's how the asteroid event caused extinction from McGuire because it said it would cause it would insert so much ash and soot into the atmosphere with photosynthesis would literally be impossible after an asteroid attacked the first strike. And I'm not really sure what he's saying here though, that you bring out your black hole generator's argument is that asteroids are imminent in the because of the instability of the Kuiper belt, which answers your second argument that it's 40 million years away. There's a recent shift in the cosmic cycle, which means that which is the reason why an asteroid strike is more likely than before. Only the planet is necessary. So they say low probability, but magnitude come first. Even if there's a 1% chance that the impact you should still vote. They thought engaged in a question of existential risk framing that you should always evaluate magnitude over probability because that there is no coming back after an asteroid. Is our extinction argument now that there is a asteroid? Each book this is an impact. I'll read your card here. Magnitude outweighed probability Boston 2009. What extinction extinction other extinction catastrophes of the combat is impossibly non-extinction disaster. Calling breakdown of global civilization is down the CR of Arthur devising issue books and independent scientists who cite mathematical calculation and says how likely and accurate is their evidence from the professor of the economy. I don't understand why is any less than there. The second argument is the probability outweighs magnitude. That argument was that skill evidence. That argument was answer whether they say security threats are bad, but our representation or justified of security more than adequate policymakers and consider or whether the policymakers are possible with less than decision makers convinced that any major action needs to be taken. The role of the committee is pivotal because global probabilities are diminished the likelihood of response to policymakers. Now they say we group to the last argument that we not deflect does not assume or saying evidence that says anti-air propulsion is the only way we can successfully deflect an action by taking out of the orbit of the Earth. Now the only advantage that immediately causes extinction are bomb evidence indicates that there would be so much more technologically advanced than us that we would cease to survive as civilization after the planet because we would have no technological build-up against them. The first argument is that they would evolve to be less violent. Argument that they've made the conscious decision to come here. They've clearly not made that evolution, or they're more likely to be here or something. Then they're not here. That will be answered later in the flow. They say the not extinction. They say it is not causing extinction. Bob writes on both sides of the issue, but the conclusion he said that ultimately we should fear the aliens because if they have come here, they are more likely to be after something for resources, etc. Which is some arguments I'll make later on the case. But they say Earth-like conditions are non-unique. This happens in a decade old. Arguments from 2010. Reason why it's preferred, and the Earth is in rare mediocre balance. Just in 10, there's a normal planet, nothing normal, nothing special to make it unique. There should be logically existing inhabited planets where contain handheld being civilization. Majority of scientific community agrees that the principle of media after group their next arguments about aliens would not exist. First, the most recent card is from 1998. Our card is from 2010. Made that argument above, and recent study shows 30,000 alien civilization dies in 10 the numbers from the universe become bigger than the real deal. The universe started said that the ground increased population alien civilization no observation. So overall in population, the rivers there's trillions of Earths orbiting the stars which are 10 million years long enough for common collective love increase number of stars. And the universe has the number of potential civilization increased by 3 times as well. Now they say they would have overcome those capabilities. That is a decent argument, but at least the plan is better than the set. We have a fighting chance against the aliens. We do not know after the plan whether we can survive them or not. Now the critique is blatantly contradicts their T-human argument. You said now let them get away with saying that these aliens are angels. They've introduced an argument that says only exploration can be human and have made an argument as to why only starting at the human starting point is a bad idea. Even if conditionality is true, you should not let them get away with conflicting discourse or conflicting ideas. Now the frame for debate whether the planet is better than status quo comparative policy often is critical to predictability, education, teaching, opportunity, cost, the use of non-competitive aids and that specific plans for implementation makes it impossible to get often kills class and education. Now the critique cannot turn or solve the case. Our impacts are not socially constructed unless they can win that our ontology or our technology affects the mathematical calculations of the Drake equation or makes aliens less likely or less hostile. You cannot turn the case. Also the case outweighs any of your genocide or 0 point impact because if you think Hitler was bad, wait till alien Hitler shows up. Or what if you bomb out and indicate that hostile aliens would utterly wipe out our civilization? Now extinction comes first. But in 88, no one concerned me to bring over the eliminating committee with the end world to take. We would have take such responsibility seriously who are perhaps 1 killing this person or the world does not perish. Now term H point, you make the anthropocentric assumption that aliens would be benign. McCott said, and all those trying to that alien civilization would be enough to conquer themselves and their to overcome the worst civilization. May not be certain that people previous experiences with world people might have convinced them to be well impaired the foreigners, but fundamental why would aliens think differently? Aliens transfer themselves beyond the bounds of beyond the bounds of their decision will by definition be aggressive. Also, offensive realism is the best way to deal with the alien threat. The Native American failure to adhere to realism led to their destruction, their civilization. Austin has offered realism often strongest choice because it offers solution to the very most effective decision which we operate in the world with realism. We can address this situation with integration. However, this scenario does not score with the artificial understanding of international relations. The Native American example offers strong confirmation of the importance of adhering to a real understanding of international relations when dealing with the new and unknown power. Natives that collaborated with the explorers were not spared, and those explorers first for power drove them to seize, land, destroy. The nation's little guard cooperation power plot still took place across the state for a while. Might still not be true when aliens realism is the only step program for considering the problem captures the essential motivation likely action off to best for preserving the earth and no solvency in turn only they have forgotten being by forgetting its existence in science, technology, and rationality. Latour 91, the modern technology is nothing more than internal mastery. Who else have forgotten? We know that unknown. Otherwise, nature will be a pure scientific object circulating subject networks are full of being those who played all take study science, technology, law, politics, economics, economics, law, straight to being sometimes. If scoring parasites, you hunger down on your force, you will indeed feel try to love who's missing, not yourself with their leave, everything we have. Never lost the difference between being and being. You always carry out the project undertaking my head and permutation with hospitality to all the discreet and impossible by multiplying our responsibilities. There cannot be a single formula for how we act in all instances like an alternative prescribed. Each ethical decision has to be based on has to be evaluated on a case-by-case basis in Trona, your author 10. In considering that this how to be both lighter, more responsibility, and ethics, we have to continually compare the incomparable. Now, kind of like Cotton is bad 8 points, move charge the negatives, have a stable active throughout the run 11, canceling boots are often learning bad actions, be 20 times, you multiple world, diminish the 2 8 times you're recommended strong into the education, counter interpretation, you can have one conditional accuracy with solve all of your offense. Now permutation both ace point is we just disclose the plan after we defeat the aliens or deflect the attributes when there's no net benefit if we take out the probability and impact of nuclear war happening, especially since they've conceded the no war. I don't have too much explanation here. I think their population control would outweigh given that the government has tons of secret shit now, so that impact is obviously not. Also, there's solvency deficit overt action because of politicization because the plan would become subject to congressional debate. Also, doing the plan overly because of technological technological retrenchment as other countries are forced to disclose the nature of their technological system. They have zero solvency evidence for the counterplans. Usually refer to the specificity of the last one AC card on this question. Also doing the plan openly risks politicization, prevents exploration, development, tailored, but I don't say from what I still would restrict what happened for the neighbors will release information that an alien invasion was impending. This includes death, funding the risk of the party being shut down, do last public sports to be sure the only way to ensure that the citizens encourage the public take that picture of human rights to survive. The organization must keep that public, the organization made public will become politicized. Also, the plan must be secret to prevent super W proliferation terrorism, proliferation terrorism, killer mode. I don't say technical events to require defend others against the invasion would be most advanced created on Earth. Overall, global security, civil government would compromise and organization given access to weapons more powerful than WDC, the super dynamic spark nuclear warfare can get access to. You might get access to absolute secrecy is required and proliferation is bad. With Gulf, widespread proliferation is likely to serve nuclear weapons most in all nations where nuclear security we would gather by the very whole nation. And terrorism is bad. They sit on before nuclear attack by terrorism to fail that potential destabilization religion and the cause of proliferation numbers for third war from no one emerged because nuclear pollution infect the whole planet. We'll all be losers. Now the Sagan said their first link card the Sagan 97 evidence about tracking asteroid, which is non-unique things we already do. That was there. That was in the 1 and 2 crossings. Also, why would we ever deflect an asteroid back to Earth to kill the rest of humanity? That literally is nonsensical. I mean, no one literally does not have a response to this in the crossings. The 1 and 2 also does not assume the covert nature of the plan. They're not engaged in a debate about the secrecy of the plan, whether it be leaked or not. We think that terrorists cannot get access to the weapons when no one knows about it. Only the counterplan triggers the Sagan is that because it publicizes that information the people can get access to that. Now, there's evidence talking about different technology, not nuclear deflection, but nuclear thermal rockets, and that we cannot bring that back down to Earth. Now, the ozone is said, our multi-house application that we can adapt to ozone destruction in the first place. Also, there's no one all references kind of chemical propulsion or develop nuclear propulsion. We also literally set up a few nuclear propulsion after we don't destroy the ozone. Also, there's massive ozone loss time in 1229. Ozone hole above the Antarctic side of North America the first time scientists found Antarctic ozone will reach a maximum size of 25 million square miles.
We'll take a second breath.
See on a flash drive?
Yeah. I can give you the paper. I can give you the paper copy.
Paper.
It's not bad. 53 years I have.
Are you ready, Jennifer, or should we wait?
I have 9:30, but I started 10 seconds. I have 9:24. I started 10 seconds.
I haven't been writing down prep. I ate from the stars.
We have 8:14 left.
Yes.
What do you all have?
9:07.
9:07.
Sure.
I should also write it down really fast. You know, shit like that.
Ready, kids?
Yeah, I'm good.
All right. Reasons to reject the team?
Kind of.
Okay. Yeah, the critique. Want to explain alien Hitler to me? Talk a little bit about that.
I mean, our the 1AC bomb evidence says that, you know, given that we know very little about alien motivations or alien assumptions when they come to Earth, we know very little about that. It is just as likely that they are here.
But it's worse. It's worse than real Hitler. Something can be comparatively better or worse than Hitler. Like,
well, our argument is that there might be someone who's out to genocide the entire human race, right? Not just a certain population. Maybe there are aliens that think, you know, kind of like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Maybe they need to explode the planet to create an interstellar highway. We know so little about the aliens. We cannot make assumptions about their motivations, so we should have a game plan and assume the worst. Because if we don't assume the worst, what happens if they are?
Assume the worst, and then there's this. Okay, that's fine.
Like, I understand, like, you find the analogy a little offensive, but
really offensive. Okay, that's fine. Another analogy. Let's talk about the other analogy. The Native Americans needed to use offensive realism to prevent the destruction. Right. Whose fault it is? Whose fault is it? Would you suggest that there was a genocide of Native American populations?
Most absolutely the Europeans' fault.
Then why should they have to adhere to offensive realism?
Our Austin evidence says
why is that their
the
fault?
Native Americans who decided to cooperate with the Europeans. A lot of people thought Cortez was Quetzalcoatl, right? They thought he was their god, and they decided to pay ritual tribute. When they did that, they did not realize the hidden motivations behind those explorers. They genocided them. In the same way, we do not know what the motivations of the aliens are. You know, we should have stood on guard more than the Native Americans did in terms of their hospitality, in terms of, they were great, they were really nice people to the explorers. And that was their mistake. That was their downfall. They didn't realize that there were motivations for these explorers.
Still offensive,
ended
but
up
that's
ending up
okay.
Only perm on the K's, perm do both, right?
on the counter plan?
The K.
The K, yes.
Okay.
Alright, yeah, the asteroids flow.
Sure.
You talk about how the reason extinction is bad is because we can't recover. I think this begs an interesting question. Is our goal in policymaking to preserve the human species because it's so cool? And if so,
No, we have
why?
not-
Or B,
well,
is it to
we have
preserve
not-
individual lives?
We have not taken a stance
Which
on
extinction doesn't, like,
Sorry, hold on.
that kills like 3 more people, right?
Okay, I understand like the late arguments you're trying to set up, but the 1AC has said extinction is bad. That claim is not exclusive to humans or to any other species. It's just that
Well, why is extinction
I mean-
precipitously worse than any other
our
amount of death that can happen?
impact evidence for
Six-
asteroids says not
6.9
only
billion people die. That's not as bad as extinction. And the warrant in that is because extinction is unrecoverable. That presupposes, like, right, a single human being. That's where the value is to you, right? Not
Not
an individual
necessarily.
existence. It's like you're not interested in saving lives so much as you're interested in
should
giving
also
us a
be
fuzzy
clear,
feeling
our
that the human
impact-
species exists, right?
both of the impacts result in the death of the entire planet, not just humans. Asteroids, nothing on the planet survives. Aliens, they would mine the earth for all of our resources. Everything dies. We have not emphasized the particular importance of a certain entity.
Alright, yeah, we'll take prep.
You said 904.
Yeah, I'm starting it. No, stop. No.
If you email Jeff, he can definitely hit you up. If you want the paper copy, I think they might have it somewhere.
It's right here.
Oh, okay.
I can't promise that this is all of it.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Might not be in person.
No.
Thank you. Jamila.
No, this is the one. It's just that. You should take it out. Is
Yeah.
this it?
This is what I need.
I'm good. It's in this one. Cool.
This stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, for clarification, the things in the counterclaim, those are just dissents to the counterclaim. They're just like different.
They're not independent.
Here. This is what I have. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And the only alien that you're sending us the card you read from 2010.
Alien's real card. I read a Diaz 2010 card in the 2AC.
Okay, was there one from the 1AC that you were sending?
Yes, the
Yes,
native. You'll have to ask.
Who's the other?
Natives 10.
Sorry.
Should be the
It's a
first part of
two-page card.
the 2-page card. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Oh, I'm so mad at myself for that. Yeah,
Are you lost?
Alright, stop prep.
How do you 602?
Awesome. Oh,
Oh,
it's
sorry.
prep.
Do you have any more one and C? Or he's taking Bristol?
Yes, 1 second.
Are you still taking birth?
Yeah, yeah. What's your author's name? Lester? What's his name?
For Top Galleon?
No, your author for the one you see.
Taylor.
Taylor, that's right. Yeah, sorry. Okay, stop out.
Okay, we need another 33 seconds.
Awesome.
Force and 10 gives us
Wait, 33 seconds?
Yes. Is it possible for us to run this bathroom course?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
I think so, anyway.
You're done the drink prep time.
No, good timing, good thinking. It is an opportunity, you might as well take it, right? Good thinking.
One second.
That is one big box of time.
No, yeah, I'll take it. Okay.
Stop her.
2 seconds.
2 seconds.
We're just fiends with that, sorry. Okay. The orders, counter plan, the criticism, the asteroid advantage. Okay. Alright, ready?
Yep.
No. No, I'm ready.
Alright. Countdown, not going to permit just the competition, but I'll enter the finish now. I first concede the reasonability standard for the team debate. It proves the reason why campaigning interventions today. We should get 2 conditional world cells, all their efforts, key to innovation. The alternative only one they're good at. They don't try new opportunities to education. And Dr. does also key Netflix ability, key to check 2C out of 2 area persuasion always. The tap and supplies also this breadth. Depth is impossible team to just read more awful answers. And hope we would drop the only chance before scope that education and breadth of information allows. For multi supports education, also turn 2C strategy and force them to read their best songs like turns and ads, also multiple firms are worse than they have they attempt to have conditionality, which skews towards the also times you is they also use their best infinite number arguments. Also, the aspects of the Asian they means they don't defend the use of G. That's another top Kelly violation because it destroys all education based on the resolution. Also, no strategy to see. Which says street options, stop crime, 1 year more significances of in remedy style, the criticism, the proper first of the overview, the criticism outweighs, and turns case versus magnitude, refusing to let beings be instant engaging, and hierarchical portion of the world refuses everything and everyone who is standing reserve allowing them to be excluded. The impact may be extinction, but it's also a form of genocide, which is our. And short times we can say that which is not like us should be excluded, or that which is potentially threatening to us, we can say we should destroy. Second, it's ethics. The only moral imperative is acceptance of the absolute sovereignness and therefore we owe ourselves together because the other calls us to recognize them before we can judge them. Which means we only can make sense of ourselves in relation to other beings, which means all the arguments about extinction, etc., only presuppose the existence of other beings in relation to themselves. That's our short time. And second is intentionality is first. They conceded this all because all matter is always indefinitely actually equal. The reconfiguration of matter does not happen. The decision to excuse what happened. The Earth, the impact is not happening. Rather, an asteroid hits the Earth or not is not an impact in itself because there's no decision to exclude other beings. We also be able to necessarily solve the case. That'll be more below. They make the argument as a T contradiction. This is not a contradiction. Our top kill argument must still be based on the assumption of what USFG policy is. If you make arguments of criticisms of USG policy, that is fine, but you also remember that you defend USFG. It's not a contradiction to say that what the standard code or what exploration or development is includes humans. We're not saying that the exploration should strictly that. Rather, it means that the way that the topic is defined should be strictly that, which means this is not this is not a contradiction. The second argument is the framing, but our interpretation that the F should defend. They can defend their plan, but because all politics are tied to the ethics, the role of the ballot is to endorse the best ethical approach to the world mode of being. First, this most real world. There's nothing more reward than the moment where you're in red. You'll see that one is here. Not second is activists or no politics exists in a vacuum. It's impossible to survey policy from the ethics, having concise and clear ethical approach to the prerequisite to their policy action. Third is have focus on that ground. 7 minutes of it through that section of the one I see where recognition of problems evaluated on an ethical lens. Only 5 seconds where a plan to act, which means they are necessarily more ahead than we are. Also, no offense. They don't exclude. We don't do policy education. Also, firm bill and takes out the chaos. Then their decision to make debate solely on the income of the policy leaves a space for real world Von Shapiro and a conceptual friends to be incentives historically discourse practice representing policy. The discourse engaged in interpretive of both the correction ideology. Therefore, representative practice developed on authorities real is always needed by one representation or another. Now, their next argument is does not turn to solve the case. I would think the alternative would be able to solve the case. The assumption of this is actually linked with our link debate, which I will do here. First, there are a couple of links. The first is our Tron Evans said their idea that technology is only a tool for us, i.e. that lasers and missile defense capabilities are only important in so far as when we put them in space to be able to deflect asteroids. Necessarily devalues them to a tool only important for us. Rather, alternatives to engage with them. The second link is their inherent assumption that when we face life, it will be like us. That is, this is a direct, we are a direct impact to this. Our tournament says that when we approach the other, it is often done through the face-to-face interaction. We assume that the other will be like us because we script ourselves and then we project ourselves into the other. That is exactly what the affirmative does. Their argument, the argument that Taylor Evans makes is because humans have historically done bad things through conquest, through exploration, necessarily aliens do the same. That assumption is inherently not only anthroperception, but it's projecting. It makes the impact entirely more likely. I think they are entirely wrong on the side of the Indians base. We assumed that the Indians were violent to us in the first place, which caused the conflict to occur in the first place. We assumed that they were enemies of Christianity, or they were not liberally indoctrinated, which means the affirmative's approach to aliens, that necessarily if they exist or not, the assumption that they will always be violent for us, which means in the scenario where aliens come to us and are not violent, their response is automatically war, because they assume that whenever they try to reach us, they are necessarily embarking on a course for genocide or to destroy us. That which is different from us is always excluded, which is exactly the reason why we are able to turn and solve the affirmative. The Taylor Evans team concedes the possibility of non-violent aliens. You should not willingly endorse a one-size-fits solution that results in the genocide of peaceful extraterrestrial beings. Now, the next argument is alien Hitler. This is a non-sequitur. This is a non-sequitur. It does not make any sense. Even if the possibility for failure is high, the risk is incredible. No, they are essentially McCarthyism. What if the Red Scare? What if there are communists in America? What if the dangers are so essentially high? The solution is not to imprison people necessarily. All the probability arguments on the case to answer this. They make the next argument that assuming aliens are bad at perception. The evidence actually goes the other way. Your Taylor Evans is a direct indirect argument says that because humans historically have been bad, you should call up their Taylor Evans. It says because humans have historically been bad, we should make the assumption that aliens are bad too. The next argument is that a failure who address these to realism already answered that above. This argument essentially is a form of moral evasion to say that it's the Indians' fault that they didn't engage in realism, because if they just would have been violent to us, then there would have been no genocide. Our argument is actually much more articulate, and in the context of the history, the way that genocide has been appropriated, which seems to have a stronger internal link. They make the argument about forgetting being. We do not forget being. We acknowledge that technology as a being, technology as a being in its alternative is the economic totality. After all this area, the recognizing that everything should be allowed to be. Not only does it become impossible to do violence to others because it refuses to engage in intentional exclusion, but it paves the way for broader spillover through consistent criticism, excluding structure that's our tournaments. Also, although we have an intentional broader spillover, we do not need to win that to win the round. If we win that, that's the one you see problematic. Voting negative form of resistance is necessarily good. They've also conceded that all forms of matter are necessarily equal, which means there's no uniqueness to their impacts. Whether humans are destroyed or not, means the dead bodies were just deleted by all formulations of matter should be protected. Merchant and that huge individual being with the more respect to treat that process to consistent with the ecology attitude sensitive atoms or individuals that have rather expressed energy and inherent the atom. They too intense intrinsic value will itself the process fluctuating energy actual entities or separating differences existing activities or occasions that constitute energy intrinsic value is not by the extent of self-interest original nature, but the existence of each cage and child dependent on the past history. We see the argument is based on the intentionality of the one they seek to exclude that which is not like us, rather than the actual configuration that exists. The next argument is that we've already done the link analysis above. All these are just as the recognition. If it's not, then they're either severing the one they see representation or the policy ethics of the one they see, which are voting issues because they make it impossible for the particularly offensive will just say hegemony good and the one they see then say Germany bad and the two see which means they can't act in the offense. Their only criticism is bits out of context, but it has to be impossible. Yes, that's exactly the point. The reason that ethics are impossible is that there's no end point to ethics. It's always a paving forward, trying to become more ethical than before, always looking to make the world a better place, which is exactly why this is not an obvious reason for us, for them to win around. Asterisk. First, go down to the risk of low evidence. Our Maslow's evidence safe severely undercut this. We did answer your extinction first framing. Our Maslow's evidence said that the precautionary principle is necessarily bad because it makes any action impossible. Because when the threats of extinction are necessarily high, when we're bombarded by the threat of action, we can never actually do anything. There's only a chance that what we do makes things worse, i.e. when the environment is being destroyed. Should we try to help that? Our Maslow's evidence says that when we take the frame, that everything will make things worse. No one can act ever because the assumption is necessarily that there's too many threats to be bombarded. That's exactly why probability should be the main the lens to evaluate things, because the only way to make sense of all these threats that are occurring is to understand them and to articulate which one is the more probable threat, which means they've already conceded the time frame for asteroids is 40 million years away. Or Bennett Evans says that literally you're voting for an impact that has a time frame of 40 million years. If you don't think that humanity would develop the technology to solve asteroids in the near future, then you are obviously foolish on this one, and I know you're not foolish. But obviously you have the technology to develop asteroids. Now they've also conceded essentially or once number 2 or 3 evidence that their authors are biased. If we win this argument, you shot them zero risk of the scenarios because their epistemology is flawed. That's our Bennett Mulder Warren's philosophers, it's academic slack-offs. All their authors are astrophysicists fresh out of college who need new ideas for papers to writers get published. They skew their numbers and use sensationalist language, means you should send them 0 per second. It's attention to keep subscribers to their journal. They only publish the flashy articles to avoid contradicting themselves. That answers their argument about how he's an independent scientist, maybe independent, but he's still exaggerating to get funding Bennett. And telling no scares that many people have seen their dress, the message enemies to bail misquote of resource could easily except for that he scare mind, story by kill comments, rogue asteroids on the next question. After oneself the mission don't lacking to prove their feet to strike down the kill asteroid. Warning in 7 code.
First question. When the aliens show up, what does the alternative do?
Does not build a wall to attack them.
Alright, so I just want to make this clear. So the alternative does not solve the case because you do not create a defense against aliens.
We don't solve the case in the sense that we don't commit genocide against aliens.
So
that's solving the case.
I have 2 linked arguments. First is that we devalue technology as tools.
Yes.
The second is that we project ourselves upon the aliens.
Yes.
The overview is that we commit genocide. Who do we commit genocide upon?
Aliens.
Okay, so we genocide the aliens. Have you proven that aliens are good?
Proven that aliens are good?
Oh, yeah. Have you proven that aliens are not
You
hostile?
conceded that out of the 1 and C that all matter formulations are of value, right? That there's no unique value to human beings. Because anything else.
We have not made a claim that human beings are intrinsically valuable.
Well, that would, if everything's valuable, right, then obviously the genocide of aliens is
I have
bad.
a question then. In the face of someone who wants to kill you, what would you do? If everything has value, would you let yourself be killed?
Yes. Because our alternative
So the alternative is collective suicide.
It's not. It's collective suicide in the assumption that aliens are inherently there to destroy us.
So in the face of life-threatening events,
this is exactly
we would let them happen. I just want to make that clear. You're making an extinction is okay.
Yeah, in some ways,
okay.
yes. But also more
Alright,
important.
that's fine. All right. Now,
under a specific lens, though. It's not just like extinction doesn't matter.
Whoa. Then why under our lens is it bad?
Because you're what?
It seems complicated when you're not extending an argument that aliens are not hostile to go for an argument that
we are extending an argument that aliens are not hostile.
Okay, what argument?
Your Lester or whatever Taylor Evans concedes that aliens might not do that. He just says, what if they are? Right? That's the exact same logic. The 1% risk.
We have never encountered an alien, so obviously there are countering hypotheses for what would happen.
Right, and that assumption that they're violent. Are you serious? The assumption that they're violent, that when we meet them we should destroy them? That is nuts, dude.
I thought we made this clear in the cross-section of the 1AC, that we don't make a blanket assumption about all aliens. Just
yes, you do. You have a one-size solution, which is put defense lasers in place to destroy them when they come to Earth. Your apple is like the genocide app.
How should we treat technology?
We should treat technology as having value independent of the uses it does.
So how should I treat my nuclear thermal rockets?
You shouldn't assume that rockets are only tools and important when they're used to destroy others.
How does that spill over to genocide?
The assumption? Well, that's a little more complicated, but the argument is that when we assume that importance is only an instrument. Okay.
Like I don't use my rake until like there's lawns on my leaves on my lawn. Is that like genocide I'm committing upon the rake?
I think that's an oversimplification of our argument.
I don't think so. Like
well, do you want me to explain our argument? Our argument is that when we assume that objects are only important insofar as the instrumental use value to us, that mindset spills over. So the reason we can,
how?
Well, because when we assume that so to like state governments and things. When we assume that objects are important only for their instrumental value, that allows for the mechanization of people for war because their lives only matter.
If I can change this analogy slightly,
sure.
Me ignoring the rake in my garage until there's leaves on my lawn somehow translates to genociding people.
That's first off.
How? We don't.
First off, the link isn't that you ignore something. The link is that you are.
I don't value it until I use it.
That's not even the link, dude. The link is that you view it only as a tool. Like the idea that the rake is only a tool in support of use value. That's the same logic that people are only important when they're soldiers for war.
Should I like sleep with the rake? Like,
dude, you should treat this argument with a little more respect. Yeah. This said, let's say in this said, the aliens flow.
I was listening. What?
Say in this said,
okay.
Aliens flow. Ozone this said.
Whatever.
What's that?
Can we grab some water while you're figuring this out?
I'm good. I think we have the water in the room. My goodness. Well.
Ready, kids?
I got it. All right.
Alright, 1 second. Alright, I'm good.
You can't get to the terminal impact level of DISA when you are making this impact frame. We have a risk of extinction, which means 1% risk of the DISA is reason to vote. Making the turns the case for a couple reasons. The first is that we we access the fastest time frame internally, they don't have any analysis on this. Our second evidence is comparative. An asteroid hit would be billions of miles away. All the evidence millions of years. Wait, all the evidence on case supports this way are conceding this claim, which means there's only a risk of human intervention makes it happen. In the shorter term means we necessarily turn the case to also concede the delay counterplan the second card. Human nature is evolving to be more peaceful than the status quo. Condition to politics is impossible. It says that if we were to detect an asteroid coming and they're conceding that we have asteroid detection technology now, human race would get the human species and would get together to deflect the asteroid, which means that there's absolutely no risk of offense on this flow of this piece of terminal impact defense. They say they're tracking the asteroids now is terminal impact defense for us as for the second argument that they are conceding above, that we would necessarily get together to deflect the asteroid if this happens, but this does not answer the argument. Even if we have tracking in place now, our evidence specific to deflection technology, this is not the same. Our second evidence makes a distinction. There's Zhang evidence from the 1AC. The tag is literally that this is the only technology that can actually allow us to deflect or to move the path of an asteroid, which means that only we are able to access this. We are the only ones with cards on this question, which means you should default to us. They say that no one would be willing to launch an asteroid into Earth. Our evidence is comparative that this is more likely than an asteroid hit happening. This probability analysis does not make sense under their impact framing, but it says that the odds of an asteroid hitting Earth would be 1 in something like 3.5 billion. But if we have at least some risk, there's a couple of reasons that they're taking evidence. First is that human nature makes us more willing to do stuff like this. We were moving away from the status quo, but in the status quo, humans still want to serve their self-interest. They are violent. They're also irrational actors. Countries could miscalculate when they see other countries evolving these weapons. He has empirical analysis. Which you should default to as the lens for viewing these questions that the countries have in the past. Use dangerous weapons, prefer empirics technology, misuse and miscalculation human nature means the land extinct the world, saying in 97. We would have to see the minimize the dangers of new technology, see if it was all safe, right, refrigerator, the molecules and inertness guarantees. There's a good status figure out we have almost stopped the reducing CFCs. Some told the invention would not be misused in a person with reckless abandonment. Places they achieve the highest levels of political power this century strong. And chances 1 in 1,000 human population become an impact. There's a likely deflection. Well, again, the rockets from another country that's recent so far. Worse than that benefits the apocalyptic risk. Deflection means attack should be delayed. The only thing more sure than asteroid striking is destructive misuse of technology, saying in 97. It's easy to think so, perhaps we're prepared now mentioned to tell and say now over enemy troops starving and self-common mention. Traditional orders are made without the question mentioned. Those supply to cover story of the asteroids about the impact of the earth with their job to deflect the city with human hierarchy from lane place to commercialization and geology. Secrecy around cover story cannot be covered. The apocalyptic orders be dissipated. No one's technologies be used for good or ill. Chief sustainability apocalypse scale we have set limits. They say it doesn't make sense, but there's a couple of scenarios. I did answer this question in questions. There are a couple of scenarios for this to happen. One is the U.S. could deflect an asteroid. They could miscalculate how big the asteroid is. We were willing to use the atomic bomb in the past, which means we would be willing to default to catastrophic technology. There's no more evidence in the 1AC is not specific or good enough to be able to take to be able to answer this. Don't allow them to make any new extensions on it because I didn't have that extension in the 2AC specifically anyway. But we would be willing to do that, or other countries could get the weapons that would cause an escalating asteroid war because other countries would be willing to use it. And this is the only reason anyone's out here actually wanted to advocate this technology. $7. Science of nimble proposal weapon system discord the militaristic intervention divine narrative compared identification mastery of the thorough military response. The overlap between science and defense legitimize both the civilian science control metaphor laboratory metaphors the keys for the threat from space and defense sciences defense women's well-being use of threatening the nuclear rounds the asteroid impact with threat scientifically validated down to which projects will be military security promotion asteroid impact make the way to war space more acceptable. The asteroids are legitimized way of talking here there was funny note they say it's cover vote for the interrupt the analysis the US alone would be enough and anyway with leaks empirically everything empirically leaks Mayor 92K. In Washington, the seconds you leaks since when they cut the chief of staff, President Fury, the next day we're forward to kind of Valverse appearing in the New York to the House. Subject to everything was immediately looked at, saying evidence will most likely be a cooperative effort, which means that other countries would get it. They say that even the Pentagon can't keep secrets of Aviation Week 9. The Pentagon links like a CPA to law includes insights over supposedly internal DoD deliberations because every officer how in the Capitol Hill they say it's different tech, but the tag of the Zhang evidence proves that this is the only way to actually deflect asteroids, which means that their technology is able to do it. Not the life we have the actual conclusion of the article. He says there's lots and lots of things that could happen when an alien visits us that will most likely be peaceful because to travel such a long way they'll have to have developed in a way that they can destroy themselves by being violent. I've read this article over the summer. I wanted to cut it, but I thought this card concluded the negative, so I didn't cut it in the first place because I was trying to make an aliens this. I had a higher standard for ethics. I think that's messed up. I didn't say that.
Keep going.
Not the aliens, the observer 2K default. Scientific consensus. Our evidence is that we have an actual scientific consensus that aliens do not exist. Another evidence is the context of intelligent life, and native evidence is the context of unicellular organism, which means that there would be our evidence says that there would have to be billions of mutations that would happen in the correct way, or to have it even there's planets that are able to house it. Then they drop the double-wide argument. This doesn't make any sense. The planet's not able to stop them. The planet's not able to stop them. It's not actually able to do anything.
How much do we have?
8 of 14.
Yes. What do you need a lighter for?
We haven't answered this question. This was on for the same reason. Be sure to specifically flag that card and answer it, because it might be something. Okay, now I did one error cards for you. Okay, because they have a lot of cards.
So you don't have this.
Yeah. You did not get the other.
No, no, you did not accept it.
Yeah, show me what you please.
Okay, I'm gonna flash these cards. No. Yeah. I did briefly, then we done that. Oh, no, these are cards, obviously. Yeah, no, she just. Yes, now.
Do you want me to read this?
Yes, we should read that card. Should we read that card?
Do you want this?
Yes, we have to essentially focus on that.
Do we want to read this?
Yes, that's there will be. We also read
This.
yeah.
I still think I know this.
Okay, yeah.
What about this one?
Yeah. 242. We're just flashing cards.
Cuts. How much are left?
240. It's on 242.
Take them. I don't know if mess with that really quick.
Alright, the order is asteroids, aliens, billions, you said, and then go to T.
Go over there. So, man, is that the glove? Returns. Yes, it's sticky.
I'm starting properly like that. Okay.
Okay.
Do we have the right cards?
Yes. Each second.
Keep your time. Here we go.
Good?
Asteroid, life, Sagan, K. Okay.
Okay. Asteroids cause extinction require evidence indicates that they will inject dust into the atmosphere so there is no photosynthesis possible, which means that people can't produce enough food to eat, and it'll cause the total extinction, not just the extinction of human life, but the extinction of all life, including plants and animals. And our authors in our biosphere used for evidence scientific findings and statistics that show high probability of collisions in the past, and empirically proven that collisions happened in the past, which means that they're likely to happen now. And all of their evidence about no action, all of their evidence in the context of small threats that, but not anything that caused extinction. All of our impacts cause extinction. They've not made a claim that asteroids don't cause extinction, which means that you should prefer to McGuire evidence and also magnitude outweighs it, because you can always come back from any impact that happens very short and impressive. There are two pieces of Boston evidence, and also all of our impacts are more probable. All of our impacts are probable. All of our impacts are probable, and they asked 13 asteroids could collide with the Earth in the next few years, which means that it's not 40 million years away. It's in the next couple of years after Eastbrook evidence now aliens. Aliens will cause extinction, live more technologically advanced than we are, which means that if contact happens, then they will don't proceed according to their desires, and if they are hostile, that means they will cause extinction. Our bomb evidence from the conclusion of the paper, and he says that the aliens are likely hostile, and if they're in that contact will cause extinction. Also, we have McCloud evidence which proves that aliens are likely to be hostile, and our native evidence about communicative civilization, which obviously is indicative of intelligent civilization, is that because of recent findings that none of the 2000 evidence assumes that intelligent life is likely. And also, they say that we can't defeat the aliens, but our statement means that we know how they are and what technology we should use, and also the planet's better than the stats, which has absolutely no deflection capabilities now.
Tracy Diaz, Carlos.
The Tracy Diaz card says that there's 30,000 communicative civilization that exists right now. Now go to the second decide. It doesn't turn case because they haven't proved that asteroids don't cause extinction. They haven't proven that asteroids don't cause extinction. We win asteroids don't cause extinction. That means other countries won't use them aggressively against other countries because they know it'll cause total collapses and empirical proven with nuclear weapons. And countries don't go to nuclear war because they know that it'll cause their own destruction, and they'll cause their own destruction. They both concede that there's no war from the U.S. even because of a national institution that's controls evidence, which means that countries have no motivation to attack each other, and that was Tracy too. Also, because they have a secret, no other country than the United States has the technology to play, has the deflection technology. They have no evidence in the specific context of the United States, which means that they have no evidence that the United States specifically will use the technology against other countries. Also, there are leaks evidence assumes that everyone in Congress knows, but only the president knows, which means that it doesn't get out to other countries and terrorists can't use it. And also, they read the Miller impact, but there's no impact. And if we win the extinction happens, then that'll outweigh. You can cross by the Morrison card from the asterisk, so that the causes change that'll happen more on the critique flow. Now go to the critique. They say that the role of that is the most ethical action. That is to say, the most number of lives. Boston and Bach evidence say that you should prioritize extinction events because the risk all of humanity. You can always revive humanity. 40% of civilizations arise. So complete extinction is impossible to recover from, but we can still access all their impacts. The 1 Taylor evidence says that alien kill will just said all populations will be worse than any historical impact. We also don't say that human life is the most important. We say that asteroids and aliens will just destroy everything. That was also extended on the alien flow. Now, Utah comes first, coming scheme 96. But not killing 1% stronger than population, saving 2% concerning the price of the green features. Okay, stop to put a minute and be my reason that you can come save the lost money. The prices that have good reason to save them. You can more person with dignity to save they are. And they can't solve the alternate doesn't do any form of planetary best program. If they do, they engage in the same form. Dark section, which means that they don't solve the critique. And all of our policies create change caused by from the asteroids and more significant indicates that if we talk about potential and impact in public debates, it'll spill over to real policy. policy movements. The discussion initiated by the applicant creates real action. Channel Bono 6. We hope that this proximate debate is another topic select for science fiction. We hope that this might shift the discussion closer to the mainstream and hope that civil defense and international communication will take seriously the ideas upon reading that some part of the agreement disagreements spark in future action. And also permutation do both. We don't make a blanket claim about aliens, but one that about the ones that they'll come here that they're likely to be hostile. Other aliens can be non-violent, so we can still value the other proposition. This solves all their offense. It's also a percentage to assume that aliens will be benign. You can see this on the alien flow where the one states that contrasts evidence that humans are peaceful and tries to apply that to aliens too. Given the history of species and interaction, they will likely be hostile. They can make the conscious choice to come here. That's required evidence, and their motivation are aliens. That's the point of the alien burnout 6. Alien motivation would just be that alien first time reasons the community believes that civilization is start to connect interstellar travel and beyond. Then things sources nonsense. We can highways to travel to the nations, fathers, how it intersects travel, how we suggest civilization destroying the process right now. Maybe about topics that the alien process are wrong. Being the right or best strategy for hope is survival of the hostile species to advance their technology as rapidly as possible. And the best way to respond to aliens is realism. The awesome evidence making the analogy to Native Americans counting the Europeans and Native American beliefs that Europeans would be friendly is exactly the cause of destruction. This is empirical proof that realism is the best way to go. And extend the tour evidence that there's no alternative solvency and turn the alternative process to ignore how being only exists in science and technology. The best way to understand our being is if we engage in political action and understand the role of subjects that are in our everyday life in creating our being through the plan. That's the tour evidence and calculative thought. It's the only way to build ethical responsibility until 3. So what's child exhibits symptoms of illness or the no ethical options to ask the question of measuring and mathematical multiples ethically. Our answers must be reduced to positive. We have ethics to nothing but symptoms are our primary responsibility. It's to happen to be ethics is nature to change. The short of nature looking back in the narratives and tech thought is inevitable. We still 11.
You had something on the back of your phone you had to say?
I got it.
Okay, wait, hold on. They've characterized the alternative as doing nothing in the face of threats. That is our realism argument. The Native Americans
the
do
alternative
nothing
does
in the face of
threats.
threats.
That is our realism argument. The Native Americans proves that we should
Be realistic, yeah.
that was realistic.
Alright, how much time do we have?
5 minutes, 29 seconds.
5?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have 5 minutes left. Oh yeah, we do. Never mind.
Corrupted.
Oh no, that makes sense. Okay. Oh yeah. I totally forgot. Thank you.
I would complain there. Yes.
I thought I was thinking about the
I
time.
thought it was 7.
Yeah. Are you sure it was 10? Okay. No. Do you have any of our cards from Tennessee or one in our? Did it?
It's all I had in my years.
There you go. Oh, no, this is these two are good.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, that's right about that.
You should have the perm on the K.
Yeah. So is this send it like right with the link?
Oh yeah, we all make violent claims.
Yes.
About aliens.
About all it is.
Okay. No, that's it. Okay, cool. Criticism, the Sagan DA, asteroids, then life.
One more time?
The criticism, the deflection DA, asteroids, and life.
I think like the.
Alright,
Yeah, it's cool.
ready?
Yep.
If you would have asked me which after the ToC come closest to advocating genocide, it would certainly be this when they conceded. A couple of Revolution 9 House wrong first, they conceded. Our entire framework of intentionality, all matter is inherently built or merchant evidence, which means the privilege of human existence or life as an existence over other forms of being is essentially not true because all forms have equal value. There's just as much value intrinsically to a rock as there's to a human being, which means all thing that matters is the intention to exclude. This means there's no impact if an asteroid hits. It's not like someone is fleeing an asteroid as it is the random access at the universe, but their intentional decision that aliens are necessarily violent, that they should be responded with more violence is an impact in itself because it leads to our second impact, which is a form of genocide, which is our internal evidence, the assumption that that which is like us should all importance of its instrumental value or it's dangerous to ourselves is the logic of genocide allows us to secure ourselves against imaginary threats or possible threats and then us to do harm to all their elements else conceive that it's not necessarily true that aliens are coming here to attack us, which means the assumption that we should prepare as if they were that there's a one-size-fits-all solution is not only their link but also intrinsically to the genocide of extraterrestrial life. More importantly, their idea that the deflection capabilities are only important so far as their ability to deflect asteroids is the link itself because it proves that their idea of the lasers are only so important as their instrumental value allows for the mechanization of populations for the sake of war. That's our short evidence, which means that we either concede an impact, which means if we win the probability frame or at least the magnitude, even if they win the magnitude framing, this does not matter because magnitude does not matter because they conceded all forms of matter is essentially equal to the only thing that matters is intentionality. Now, the live line debate, they've conceded our framework argument that you should evaluate the ethical implication for the 1AC before their plan X because all IMCs are tied to the ethical justification streams. There's no unique offense. They cannot use the plan as an offense in this round. They are actors presupposing an argument that we should have a determined structure in place before we interact with the other, which means that if we win the thesis that we owe ourselves to the other, that is offense against them. They're allowed to weigh the plan X to make the util evidence about util being first. This begs the question of what it means to be util in the first place. If we win our intentionality framing, then the most utilitarian-esque action is really to be of another being. They conceded our intro evidence about the ethical obligation to the other comes before the extinction of the human before their extinction claims because we owe ourselves to the other because there's only the opposition between what is other and ourselves that become to know ourselves and for that means the only scenario in which they have impacts to the actual destruction of the human race is in relation to alterity, the relation to the way that we understand alterity, the way that alterity comes to understand us, which means our argument comes before they're actually able to weigh the arguments about a case that's still being true now. They make the argument that they do not know the motives of alien. That is exactly our point. You should view this in the context of the Indian realism debate. I would pose a flip to this argument. Would violence ever be good in the abstract, or rather, had Indians been violent, had the Indians' response been violence rather than peace, would the genocide that we engaged against the aliens would that have been at all permissible? Obviously not, which is exactly our argument why they actually are more likely to commit genocide against the alien race. The assumption that the exactly sort of link which I love, the assumption that the aliens are necessary bodies, the projection of the self on the other child capable, which proves the thesis as to why the affirmative is necessarily a bad idea, because they necessarily script a response of violence. They assume that violence is the way that aliens would interact with us, and they say that violence is the way that we should interact back, which means we'll only need to let more violence, which means that we a better alternative. They make the argument, the calculative thought is good. This argument is new. No one actually you should reject our criticism of calculative thought was in the 1 and 2. Our short evidence says that the idea of calculative thought implies that being simply like us, which means all the extension of the other is necessary. Often they make the argument that the alternative is not able to solve the extension. I do not even think they know what this literature evidence says. It just said that there's an inherent being which is exactly our argument why you should really let beings be. Our alternative is to embrace the absent others, to not close ourselves off to difference, to say that it's something to be excluded, but rather open ourselves to difference, to say that difference is important, to make their permutation that I've conceded. Our link analysis here, the first is the idea that the technology is only important so far as instrumentality. The second is their one-size-fits-all solution to the alien, to the idea of extraterrestrial life. The idea of that extraterrestrial life is inherently violent. It's exactly what I'm trying to criticize. It's the projection of the self on their other Taylor evidence says that the reason that aliens might be violent is because we make assumptions that they will be like us, i.e. is why he gets to the idea of alien Hitler in the first place, which is exactly the link I've been talking about. This is an indict of their epistemology. It proves that aliens were not necessarily violent, why you should not support the genocide of them, whether they are violent or not.
That's ToC back.
No, that's fine. I don't care about that. Asteroids, flow. They have conceived that the impact is 40 million years away, or better evidence is conclusive on this question that said that authors are necessarily biased, that the always detection proves it's 40 million years away. You should reject their author. They conceded the better evidence that they take money from NASA, which means they publicize their findings. This calls into question whether asteroids cause extinction or not, because they're more likely to say that the asteroid is more probable or more magnitude high magnitude to get more money for the funding arguments. Now their risk calculus arguments are necessarily bad. That's romantic evidence. The world is you should always evaluate probability before such risk, because the world is always hit with lots of impacts. You can only know them through probability. The chance that an asteroid actually hit us is incredibly low. It's likely to move out of the way, which means that because we always face with lots of threats, lots of times, simply saying we should only look to the biggest one does not make sense. Least political paralysis proves the reason why the big cake come first. We also have internal links onto the other Danish. That's fine.
How much time do we have? 2 something. 50. All right. 2:42.
Yeah.
You got it.
Let me see was a deflection
Yeah, it's the same as the key. You don't. Yeah.
like aliens and asteroids, it's like deflection skills that we can be aliens and the US alien space one.
What was the one?
There's an asteroid that came in 2000, this asteroid deflection that had this a security / network, just like idea of aliens being hostile is that, and counterplan to not do the plan C, which is something that makes sense.
What's the first thing you said, sorry?
Either, within
Those
the
are-
working games.
There's both.
Yeah, but I heard of those things.
Okay, thanks.
Is Carly working still? Yeah, she's just looking around.
Yeah, exactly. Ernie felt big. And asked me, you were getting on, I said, what is communication?
Good question. Who she's coaching here? No, she just came in last night and we haven't had to talk. I'm not really sure.
Will you bring the flashlight for me?
Oh, sure. Just you wanted to.
asteroids, then again. That's one for that. Okay. Asteroids and K, we good? I have that other asteroid, this one. Thank you. Ready? Asteroids cause extinction. You cannot go for a K that almost exclusively relies on links to our aliens' advantage to get to asteroids. The asteroids advantage in 40 seconds with only defense and very flippy explanation under their offense defense paradigm. If we win any risk of our asteroid impact, we are the only ones that lead to extinction because the impact at the end of the 2 hours is essentially that the genocide of aliens is better. But honestly, I think that we can outweigh with global destruction. I don't have a single piece of impact defense in the 2 hours said asteroid impacts do not cause extinction. There's only a risk that it is a long time for impact. I don't have a strong VTL genocide first argument, especially in lieu of 2 USO cards that aren't really answered in the 2 hours to be later on the critique debate. Look, the one is the Morrison evidence. The one is the Morrison evidence independently says the threat of asteroid construction is good for policymakers. People do not take the threat seriously, which means that the representation, at least, of that asteroid impact is justified and is able to solve extinction. The one is the impact evidence. I forgot the author said a single asteroid, either 1 kilometer, 4 kilometers, or 10 kilometers, will strike there that will pour acid into the ocean, and will inject so much soot into the atmosphere that photosynthesis literally becomes impossible. The reason that you should not evaluate their bias arguments is that look at the surface of the Earth, look at how many crusts, look at how many craters are on this planet. It's empirical proof that asteroid strikes do happen, and it is very likely that they will happen in the future. The fact that we have not gotten hit by a large asteroid is just the fact that we are lucky. You've conceded some the specificity of our Easterbrook evidence, which is not contested in the 200 at least. We are entering an unstable cycle in the solar cycle. The Kuiper belt is flinging asteroids fucking everywhere, which is the reason why it is uniquely likely that we are going to be hit within the next 40 years. Also, their 40 million years argument is not very well explained, given that their author is a professor of the economy, or the Easterbrook is at least a scientist. So you should at least refer to the question of scientists, because I don't think they're going to win the direction of bias or bias arguments. The historically proven argument should answer that mostly above. Even if people publish the most flashy journals, you have not proved that the asteroid threat is not imminent, which is at least our 1AC Easterbrook evidence, because you don't have very good you don't have very good evidence. You're not even saying prefer probability before the probability first. There is not enough work here done in the 200. There's a 100% probability, because you've conceded that we will inevitably be hit by an asteroid, and only nuclear thermal rockets are able to deploy that. Also, magnitude is able to come first. You've conceded our framing of existential risk. You cannot come back from extinction, which is the reason why that's come before all of their alien genocide argument, because when an asteroid hits the Earth, everyone dies, no one comes back, and that is an impact that you were able to hang your hat on. Critique. I know Nathan's arguments appeal to you intuitively, especially given how hard right we roll in terms of offensive realism and threat construction, but we strategically chose to read this out in front of them because we know they were going to go for this big security-style argument, and we were going to win the impact tournament. H-point aliens are more likely to be hostile than not hostile. This is a crucial framing point in the 200. Nathan has not given you a single reason why aliens would not be hostile. He has not extended his bomb evidence. He has not extended a double blind that we're not able to solve aliens. This is a crucial point, because even if he is right that we put our own human aspirations upon aliens, that putting those human motivations upon aliens is a good thing, and it is more likely to be true. We have 2 cards here in the 1AC, the 2AC bomb evidence, as well as the 1AR card here that should answer most of their arguments in a solvency for the permutation. Alien motivations are alien, which is exactly our point. We do not know what their motivation is. The reason why we do not link to their linked arguments is because we do not make a blanket assumption about all aliens. This was explained in the cross-text of the 1AC. Some aliens might be too fucked. I would love to have an ET taking out a flying bike ride, but it is likely that the aliens that come here have a motivation to come here. Think of all of the historical examples. Columbus was trying to get spices. Cortez wanted to go. This isn't limited to humans. In recent years, the red ant population moved into North America and then violently took over other ant populations the same way the aliens are likely to do so. The beast one is the asteroid. That was explained above. They have no impact even to the top of their framework debate. We have to make decisions here. Even if all matter is important, we necessarily have to create a hierarchical standing of which life might be a little more important. I think we can win that human life is important. Life is important. when it comes to the truth between the genocide of the humans and the genocide of the aliens, Kevin Harney, it would be hard for you to look at me in the eye and say, I don't think planet Earth is as valuable as a potential genocide of the aliens, especially when we are controlling the direction of whether or not they will be hostile. Our first step is a good move. Our intention is pragmatic. Our starting point is based ethically in good decisions. Our Kaminsky evidence, our Bach evidence, we have an ethical obligation to save the most number of lives, which is an impact framework that I don't think is well responded to, or has any cards that alien genocide or minor genocide should come first. So your immediate impact calculus should be, can I save the most number of lives? Now, their argument that technology is only used for a tool. I don't know how this spills over to genocide. I don't know how, this was not very well explained in the tuner, so there's no impact argument to that linear argument outside of projecting our motivations upon aliens. Now they say their ethical option argument, or Bostrom evidence answers this, but the only ethical option is prioritizing existential risk, which is framed on the other advantage. If we win that asteroid cause total human extinction, that means we're the most ethical, value life. Look, we just have more cards and more cards on the question of whether aliens will be hostile. The tuner has not extended the bomb card. We have the only evidence that aliens are likely to be hostile. I think this fate's crush. Give it back.
Both of the YMC cards and Murphy and Shapiro from the block.
The merchant.
Yeah, that was like the framework card you sent in the 2NR. That was Shapiro rather, like the solely policy focus equals real world
The
violence.
policy focus bad.
And then the Rocks of People card, which
Yeah.
I think was
Merchant, yeah.
Merchant.
Yeah, sorry. I have like weird stars sometimes.
And then from y'all, just all of the cards are starting for offensive realism good.
Okay.
We should kill aliens. Specifically, realism good in Temple Native Americans, the assumption that aliens are not like us is anthropocentric. And there was a card from the 180 that you think makes such claims you were saying, because that's me as well.
That aliens are hostile? Yeah. I don't know what happened to the dude who took the PC.
Wait, we have it on
Oh,
computer.
is this
You
it?
can just jump it if you want to.
Oh yeah, I'll just throw them all away.
Yeah, oh, you're welcome. Yeah, okay, it's okay. We'll just give it to you on the computer.
We'll give it to you on the computer when we fly.
Here, I'll put that back in order. Thank you.
I know.
What'd you do during the round? What'd you do during the round?
Do you have any of the 1 and 2 cards?
Honestly, I think I gave you
I'm
all the
gonna
cards.
put the what you see and then start coming up, and if we find anything, I'll
Totally.
give it back.
I'll probably run over.
There's a sheet of paper underneath the table.
I think it's over here.
I think you have some of our one cards. Actually, I know you do, because I can see it. Would you pass me that one AC card over there?
Which one?
The one on your.
This one? Want to see it? Any up?
Thanks.
You got it.
So is it over?
Yes.
Yeah, it's over.
You're just waiting for the.
You're just waiting, and so there's just paper under the table as well, so I don't know.
Oh, yeah, I saw a sheet of paper over there. Jason, will you go?
I got it.
I don't know who it is.
It's all the way over there.
Got it. This one here. What happened?
Is there any other card here? Can you put the one in here? I don't know if you have any more.
Yes.
It's the
The one in your red.
that card, yeah.
Do we want smallest card?
Yes, I have that in there.
Hang on.
Do you have any more offensive cards?
Huh?
You have to keep it back now.
We do, I didn't read one of them.
It's something but never sent it out even before.
Do you guys know this card?
I mean, I don't know.
I don't remember the dates for these cards.
We're still on.
Yeah, the native American, an
Why don't we just like
anything,
read?
anything in the one you see that had to do with that.
OTG.
Does he want this too?
The real stuff.
No, we're not.
Yeah.
I think you got it, LJ. Copy of that bill, that photo. I didn't even notice. When did you take that?
Is this afternoon stuff?
Yeah.
Jason, what was that thing that you told me about where they switch topics? They went back to the last year's topic because then.
That was, Steven Wheel and robots against Poland.
Do you guys hit next round?
Huh?
Do you hit next round?
Notre Dame. There you guys.
Why do you go?
Katie?
That's the only one he goes to, isn't it?
Did you know that Richard has only been debating policy for 2 years?
I did not know that.
Yeah, he did LD and then junior year Richard did
He's
policy.
like he would love LD.
Yeah,
He's got the kind of attitude.
Why?
Hey, Richard? 'Cause he always makes weird faces. It's like an LD thing, right?
something like that.
You made that up.
I'm not mad at that.
It wasn't that. Oh, man, thank you.
Did we show what shirt around?
We haven't seen the Schultz. Wait, you know what you're on.
I'm a fan of this taking pictures.
He loves.
I told-
I'm gonna have to take that.
I told you.
Chafin lives for the attention.
Yeah. I told him already that you love to watch.
He does.
No, we don't want to
This
read
is the
it.
part you did.
Yeah, we should scratch it because they forgot that this time. If they deflection now.
That's up to you.
Is Kansas based
Huh, it seems like all the
No, not even going to
affirmative
Kansas.
teams
Just him, got the hired gun.
get to stay in the same room.
Who's
Yeah.
Sean working for?
Roughly. So when that happens, inevitably.
Ricker is working for Gerald.
He always
All
works for
of
Gerald.
them.
Yeah, I think he lives in Florida now.
Oh, no, he doesn't. He just goes and flies down.
Yeah. He always works for
How
Gerald.
often?
It does feel like that, but
So now they only have half the kids moving
So now
throughout.
am I going to see Ricker a lot? Because they were Trinity or?
I don't know.
We'll shut this so
But
the
that's
singing
gonna be
doesn't
a lot
disturb you.
for these guys.
This
Starts
is
at 3:45, at 10:45
He's usually in ones, but
10:29.
it's a little more.
Fair. Where are you on college?
I have not
UGA.
decided yet between UGA or Wake Forest.
Are you
Wow,
gonna
you've got like 2 days.
Yeah, I know.
May 1st, doesn't
I guess the
it? When they want
benefit is then you don't have to strike any judges. for-
That's true, exactly, that's kind of what we thought.
That's smart.
But Wake Forest is giving me $44,000, and I was just like,
That's pretty good.
I know, but I also just don't want to go to Wake. I should.
UGA,
Yeah, I got into honors college, whatever, I don't know.
that's pretty good.
You know Robert Galkin?
Yeah, is he going to UGA
Going
too?
there, yeah, we might debate together.
Oh, that'd be a good partnership.
So I'm like trying to take debate out of.
Wait, aren't you
my
both
debating
two ends though?
Yeah, I think I'd be the two
Who's
exhibit.
big in Austin next year?
I don't know yet. That's still all up in the air. He might be double suited someone. Not really sure.
If I would wait with Gallagher.
Yeah, there's a good chance Austin might debate Galaxy.
So what's going to Trinity?
I don't really know yet. Just me so far.
You're going to Trinity?
Yeah.
Where's Noah going?
Dartmouth.
Ooh. Yeah, wow.
Dartmouth is, Noah's a smarty pants. He's smart for me. I have no idea who's going
It's all good.
I know, it was.
I don't know why I'm even trying to take cards so David could always.
Like, they didn't do anything.
David? Yeah, Gotham's really good,
You
man.
saw like this and then
Just fine.
That's a
David.
good start. I was like looking for a card and he found it like within
I just
5
paid my
minutes after
deposit.
you told him to look for it.
Oh, your
That's
room
awesome.
and stuff?
Not
I
my
couldn't
room,
find
but
it.
my acceptance card.
Johnson looked
That is-
ridiculous card. I was like,
Is that the one?
yeah.
Yeah, that
I
was a
like,
good one.
what? Yeah.
Where's Noah?
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
defense of human life as distinct from non-human life until the 2AR, and even then it's far too little too late. Going back to the 1NC, and then again in the 2NC, there's an argument that is at the top of the 2NR, it's like very explicitly where they're hanging their hat, you know, a large part of this debate, that the distinction between inorganic and organic matter is false, that the impacts to the affirmative are nothing more than a rearrangement of equally important particles, that all atoms are equal, which is language used in every speech, as well as the 1NC and more 2NC evidence, which is a distinction that isn't even addressed by the affirmative until the 2AR, and even then, you're just like, yeah, we should like organized matter.
I thought the one I briefly was like, we don't take a stance on what life is important, all life is important.
So you have to impact your F. So that means, that's fine, but that, even if this isn't an offensive argument, and I'll get to what their offense is in light of this, that just means you have no impact to the F.
Okay.
Why is life important? Why is life good versus non-life? Why does it matter when we die? When the 2NC is like a corpse has the same value as a human being, which that is something we should answer, you know? You have to distinguish why life and why human life, as opposed to other lives, have value. I don't think these arguments are very good. I think these arguments are kind of terrible, actually. But this is not, I would be doing a ton of work for you if I was to be like, yeah, this part where there's like reading card after card, both the 1NC and the 2NC, and just like spending top 2 minutes of the 2NR, are never explicitly refuted, never in the language that they've been using, and not even intuitively by any arguments you're making. You need to explicitly say, life is important, as opposed to inorganic life, for this reason. Humans are important, as opposed to non-humans for this reason. In the 2AR, you sort of get to that. You're like, yeah, like, some life is marginally better than other parts, but you don't really explain why, in light of kind of their argument that things are equal, and this is nowhere else in the debate. This is a defensive argument, and I could think of some 2AR framings based on your cards, because I think I didn't really evaluate the debate. I would have had to take a lot longer to think about it. My gut was that you were winning the basic thesis of the aliens debate based off of 2NR coverage. But then again, the 2NR doesn't really try to win that debate very hard because he's framing his argument around this distinction of life versus non-life. So I think that your 2AR is to the wrong critique, basically, and is the wrong portion of the critique that they end up going for. And you sounded great on it. And the fact that this argument is just like kind of idiotic, like, is, I didn't like really punish you speaker point wise, but I don't think this debate really is winnable if you don't have an argument for why life is more important than non-life. You need to have a distinction. The second part of this decision that also made this kind of strange is that the 2AR and 1AR never really mention the fiat parts of their framework. The 1AR reads a card actually on this, but it's not extended in the 2AR. And the framework arguments they make is that the role of the ballot should be to ethically orient ourselves towards kind of the world and other people and stuff like that. The plan is an offense is phrasing used in the 2NR, but it doesn't pass. It's like an irrelevant policy that has nothing to do with our lives and how we can live. But if we let things be, we can order ourselves in a way that makes us less violent and happier and stuff like that, which is something that we have agency as over people, whereas we don't have agency over whether or not the plan passes. And I would be willing to give you some of the F, because a lot of the things you're saying, where it's like the F is really important and has a huge impact, can be articulated. Once again, that would be doing work for you, so I might not even do that.
What about the discussion of the act is important?
Well, I don't think you spend very much time there. Where do you think you say this?
On the asteroid advantage, I'm talking about the reservoir asteroid, the Morrison card, on the Taylor and Boone card, with the discussion of the 1AC attacks effectuate real change.
See, I don't really have you saying that anything spills over to the rest of the world. Even so, you don't really answer their superior evidence, which is like kind of excited on the framework part of the debate, which is just like, we sacrifice our ability to effectuate change when we focus on the agency of others. At the very least, I have a short-term internal link to making us happy. And the thing is, what I was about to say, which I think answers your question more directly, is that once they've won that rocks are people, and all of these things have the same value, there's no impact to the F, really, that I see as tangible or important. So it doesn't matter. It's just a point of ethical orientation. And
so how do you think util interplays that, or does it not?
The thing is, utilitarian, I vote on presumption. I don't think that you have an impact to the app that's articulated as a reason there's value. So it doesn't really matter. Like, you don't have a case if they won this argument because you haven't distinguished significance, like why your app is superior to the status quo.
Did you want the 1AR to say life is good because life is good?
No. Well, there's a couple of ways you can approach this. I think that if you say some of our evidence is in defense of how to
portray ourselves ethically, the ethical alignment of a human being is to exist in a couple ways. First of all, I think the Torah evidence can be spun as an ethical orientation for the way we should live. If the Torah is right, that the ethical way to be authentic is not so much to think about how to be authentic, but rather just to live. It means that life itself is an ethical prerogative because it allows us to keep on living things. I think that you need to probably make some counter arguments. Like, why is human life good? Like, we have sentience and we can think. And there's no one else, there's no external actor who can evaluate value if there is no humans, right? Like, who is around to think the universe is good that we know of if humans aren't existing? Does that make sense? So, like, why does rock have value if rock doesn't know it has value? Like, so yes, matter is equal in matter of particles, but the configuration of particles that give things sentient thought are a prerequisite to being able to give things value. Is, I think, the best answer to anthropocentrism. There's like some Bobert's cards that talk about the idea that rocks or people are anthropomorphic. They kind of give human value and human qualities to rocks.
Yeah.
And that's like a kind of shitty way to approach the environment, both in an ethical standpoint, as well as like a logical one, because that doesn't make a lot of sense. So there are answers to these arguments. And the answers are actually very good, because they just make intuitive sense, because rocks aren't people. But I just would be doing so much work for you, like a ton, because I really just think the 2AR is actually to the wrong critique. They're like, we're going for the rocks and people argument, because that's the stuff that the 1AR doesn't deal with.
That's why I thought I front-loaded our asteroids argument that, you know, kills everything, rocks, people.
Who cares? No, it doesn't kill rocks. It just rearranged them in different manner. The universe is still around. So about the, who gives a shit about the Earth? Like, there's one part where you're like, Kevin Hearn, you know, you gotta look at me and I have to stare you down and tell you that rocks don't matter, the Earth can die in an asteroid attack. Yeah, I'm telling you the Earth can die in an asteroid attack. You need to have a defense of that, other than just kind of strong arming. Yeah.
Because when we had faced these things before, the advice was appeal to the intuitive nature of life is good.
Yeah, you should do that. But you need to do that earlier than the 2AR.
Earlier in the 2AR?
Earlier than the 2AR.
Oh, than the 2AR. They said earlier in the 2AR. I was like...
And you need to do that with more warmth. Like, ethical appeals are nice. That's like the negatives grandstanding and saying, oh, you said alien.
Our game plan to address that question that everything has meaning is that we don't take a stance about what is meaning and what doesn't have meaning. Our impacts are constructed upon global destruction.
That has to have meaning, though. For that to be evaluated as an impact, that needs to have meaning, or else you haven't justified a reason to vote affirmative.
Alright.
Like, if you have an extinction impact, you have to defend life versus non-life. That is something you have to take a stance on. And if you take a stance on it, it's not necessarily an offensive argument for them. It just means you haven't given a reason to vote affirmative. Because the only impact you've isolated is life.
Absent that debate, what do you think?
Yeah. I think that you're... But the thing is, that should not be very... You shouldn't feel great about that.
Yeah.
Because they spent 3 minutes of the 2NR on this argument, and you spend 20 seconds and it's pretty much new and not warranted. So, like, they're not putting their eggs in that basket. I thought they had some great arguments earlier in the debate. Like, there's some... They didn't explain them as much as I would like them to. You were doing a better explanation.
What arguments?
The best argument I thought you all had was just like, if it's true that aliens are going to attack us, then clearly they're at a different technological playing field than the Africans because they have interstellar travel. So, like, aside from the futility of making assumptions about any of this, they could probably... Like, the way I imagine this was kind of like a role-playing game, kind of like Magic or Pokemon or something. Like, if you imagine the progression of civilizations in terms of magnitude, like, the Native Americans would have like 1 offense and 1 defense point. Columbus would have like 10, we'd have like 100, and they'd have like 1,000. I think an example is like, okay, the Native Americans fight back against Columbus. They like, so as they're winding back their bow and arrow, they get shot in the face. How is that much better for them? Likewise, imagine Columbus fighting back against us. Imagine, it's like,
yeah.
The only survival strategy would seem to make us seem like so cute and nice and likable, the aliens felt bad for us.
Yeah.
It's like, it's just like plausible survival strategies, kind of trying to brainstorm.
Well, yeah, that's what animals do when they're getting killed. They turn on their belly.
Yeah, that's why. Like, and there are evolutionary examples of this. If you want to like does have big eyes, as well as like female, and really every gender, or actually, they're not even necessarily female if you want to go the gender approach, because in species where women are larger, or females are larger, then males have like colorful patterns, like mallard ducks, for example. Females are larger, so the males compete with each other to see who is more beautiful to try to attract females. just like kind of framing of how I make ethical choices, I think the only ethical choice is to avoid approaching other things as genocide, because that allows things to become and makes us better people.
Would that remedy thing, everything?
Yeah, remedy's nothing. Remedy is absolutely nothing. But nothing matters, because we're all just random arrangements of particles. And because we're just random arrangements of particles, the only thing that matters is how we do this ethically, because ethics is just a system for determining how value works. And the only values that we can have, the things we're constructed, is basically how we feel about stuff, even if our life has no value or meaning.
Thank you.
Good luck next time, guys.
You too.
Much sound